It's the Boris Dirk podcast. Emergency potting here on a late Tuesday night. Woj bomb. Mikal Bridges is headed to the Knicks for 5 first rounders, 5, 1 second rounder, and a pick swap. We're going to remember this night. I am joined by Max Klotz and 2 Nets fans, the only 2 I still know of in existence, Andy Gottnick and Justin Radin. I was about to post our big boards heading into the round 1 of the draft tomorrow night, juxtaposing yours with mine, some nice little formatting, maybe get a few likes. You know, we're on our way up. Check out the Twitter. But now I can't because Twitter is one big Woj bomb debris fest. I don't know what this means moving forward for the Knicks exactly, but we're here to break it down. Guys, how are you?
I am in shock. I imagine the Nets fans, this is the reality that Nets fans have been pushing for, actually doing a full rebuild, and I'll let them speak to that. I won't speak for them. But this, it's the biggest trade the Knicks have made since trading for Carmelo Anthony. Like, we haven't made this type of move in a really long time, and it's taking a while to wrap my head around it. Hopefully over the course of this pod, I'll be able to. But the number of different scenarios that are rifling through my head, especially with free agency not having started yet, and the uncertainty of what this team is. Is it the team last year just dropping in Mikal, or is the team going to look vastly different next year? That's surely going to shape how I think of this trade, but currently my stomach is in knots. I am a mix of wildly excited and terrified. And I'll pass it over to you, Andy. But I know this is what you've been pushing for a while.
Listen, this all started with Drew asking me 1 year ago, probably today, if I would trade Mikal for either Dame or for the rights to pick Scoot Henderson. And what it turned into is that I'm trading Mikal Bridges for the rights to pick Cooper Flagg next year. It has been how many minutes, and we have not mentioned yet that the Nets are getting their control back from Houston as well, a major part of this too.
Oh, yeah, we got control of our picks. So now we can lose, and it's fun.
Control of our picks in a draft. That's going to be great. And yeah, Max, I have been pushing this. I love Mikal, fantastic player. I don't think that this is a bad trade for the Knicks. My smile that has not worn off since this trade has been announced is not because that the Knicks made a mistake, but it's because the Nets finally made the right decision that while Mikal is great, he's not the answer, and they're finally moving forward. And I know, Justin, I got to hear what you have to say.
I mean, I was ready for Joe Tsai to sell the team. I was ready for Marks to be fired. I was done with this team. I was almost out, and right when you're out, they pull you back in. This is all I could ask for. I mean, I'm like with Andy here. I can't stop smiling. They haven't had a direction in a long time. It feels like it's been a disaster since the Durant, Irving, Harden years. And I'm just ready for a new direction, a real direction with a new coach who can develop talent. And this will be the last time the Nets are relevant until June 2025. So I'm going to enjoy it.
How many picks was it for Drew Holiday?
I just looked that up. It was 3 unprotected firsts and 2 unprotected swaps for Drew Holiday. And then they gave him a big deal as well.
And you were trading him with just like the tiny percent chance like something goes wrong when he gets there. Obviously, he and his agent are telling you like, we want to stay in Milwaukee if you do this. But yeah, he's not, the bottom line is you don't have control. Something could go terribly wrong, chemistry issues, and he bounces. So maybe Drew with more contract control is a 4 first-round pick guy. Mikal Bridges, what is his contract looking like? How many years is he now a Knick for sure?
So he's got 2 more years on his deal at a very reasonable number of $23 million this year, which is how they were able to do it with just Bojan being the only player in the deal. And then 25 next year, and then he becomes an unrestricted free agent, and things get very interesting for the cap sheet in 2027. But for the next 2 years, he is on a wildly affordable contract at 23 and 25 mil.
My uneducated guess was just that Mikal Bridges, with a couple of years left on his contract, at one of the best numbers in the league for what he gives you, is probably a 3 first-round pick guy. So I'm initially flabbergasted by the number of picks. It's crazy to me.
Well, you need better friends because friendship is what got that done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, Sean Marks, who I think was widely considered one of the best at his job in the league for a long time, has just been completely out of the public eye for a few years. I mean, so have the Nets. It's been a damn graveyard at the Barclays Center. What a return to stardom for Sean Marks. He said, you know what? You want to leverage this Villanova friendship? You're going to have to drop the fattest bag in a long time. And I also just thought, like, based on the way the Paul George trade has gone for the Clippers, that we were past trades with this number of picks. I mean, Donovan Mitchell was what, 3 or 4? I like Mikal Bridges as a player more than Donovan Mitchell, but I don't feel like the rest of the world does. I feel like that's not a consensus opinion. Let's talk about the Knicks real quick.
Yeah.
If first off, if I'm a Nets fan, I'm so excited to get Bridges out of my program. I mean, he's had one foot out the door. He's been emotionally cheating on you guys on social media. I would be just like ripping through the pages in the CBA for tampering rules based on some of the shit I've seen in the Instagram comment section. It's
Wait, Drew,
fucked
I have a
up.
question for
Yeah.
Max, anyone. So how do the Knicks plan their practice schedule around the podcast next year? You think they pod Monday mornings and then, all of them, go out to Westchester for practice?
Yeah.
That's going to be a big
In the
thing that
group
Tibbs is
text.
going to have to
There
deal with.
were, and when there were the Paul George rumors flying around, everyone was like, are they going to have to make room for 2 podcasts? Because there's the podcast P and
Yeah.
then the roommate show. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems I bet Mikhail is going to be a recurring co-host on that pod. But I mean, just from the Knicks perspective, like, assuming they bring back OG, which is a massive contingency in all this, and all the noise from both Woj and the more like plugged in local guys like Ian Begley has been that this deal was made with keeping OG in mind. Now, the other part of it, which we'll get to, is that it might mean losing Isaiah Hartenstein, which would not be great. But if they keep OG and Mikhail, they're getting back Randall. I know this isn't a Randall-friendly room, but I do think he fundamentally changed the way he played last year. But even without that, they're going to have, especially when you look at how Boston just won the title, it's about two-way players who can't be exploited on either end of the court. It's about the quality of not just your best players, but how overwhelming in talent are you when we start getting to your third best player, fourth, fifth, sixth. Boston probably had one of the best 3 through 6s we've seen. If this team brings back OG, they're going to have two-way wings galore with OG, Bridges, and Josh Hart, who isn't a two-way wing in the way that they are, but he does contribute on both ends. Josh Hart's going to be coming off the bench when this team's fully healthy. Same with Dante DiVincenzo. That's one of the better 6 and 7s that you're going to have in the NBA. And then your top 4 of Brunson, who I think in the playoffs showed he's a top 10 player in the league.
I feel like this is a savvier move for the Knicks if they don't bring back OG. Like when this happened, I automatically thought that this was going to be. They thought OG was getting priced out of their range. They didn't want a guy who's been injured, who's injury prone. They're going to replace him with a guy who's on maybe the best deal in the NBA, one of the best deals in the NBA, who plays every game since high school he's played. He's much more durable. And I thought, oh, that's really savvy. I don't know. The second tax apron kills you right now in the new CBA. So, like, do the Knicks really want to pay OG 35 plus? They have Brunson's deal that's coming up. They're gonna have to pay Bridges in 2 years. Like, I think it's better if they let OG go.
What happens if OG and Hartenstein walk? Then can we do an emergency pod?
Then things are really bad. Yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen. 35 for OG. It sounds like a lot, but when you look at some of the contracts that are getting handed out around the NBA, like Scotty Barnes could be up to 50 million a year from Toronto. Like Jaylen Brown is really good, but he's going to be making 60 million a year. Like 35 for a guy who's one of the best two-way wings in the game, provided he stays healthy, which is a concern. And I'm hopefully they can get a bit of a discount on him for that. But I still think this trade was made, I think, with the Celtics in mind, in large part, where you need guys who can match, you can throw at Tatum and Brown and they can guard them one-on-one. And you need to have multiple of those bodies. So the Knicks have that, assuming they bring back OG with Mikhail, with OG, with Hart. And I do think it makes a Randall trade more likely down the line, although Randall's on a pretty good contract right now, also making sort of like 20 to 25 in that range, maybe upwards towards 30, but in the 20s. And Yeah, I mean, for the time being, and especially if there's a lot of noise about Brunson signing a more team friendly extension this summer as well, which would help matters going forward too. Perhaps set the precedent for other guys taking less money, although we'll see about that. Yeah, I still think OG has to be brought back for this to be a good deal. And given that OG's agent is the GM's son, I'm guessing that happens.
I could not agree more. I think OG coming back is a major factor to this. Max, you stole the words out of my mouth mentioning the Boston title run. I think having Bridges, having OG, having Hart, having DiVincenzo who can play D as well. I think having multiple guys, as you said, that can switch on to different perimeter ball handlers is key. And I think bringing OG is a must back on this deal. And as I said before, if Mikal is a Knick now, does he play every game again playing in Tibbs' system?
What's a closing lineup with Randall? What is that lineup to you guys?
It's Brunson, McHale, OG, Randall, and a center, I think is the closing lineup. Which is three great shooters. OG from the corners is great, at least. And Randall, who I do think did really change the way he played last year. And that stretch when I keep doing this thing with my hands, that stretch where the Knicks first traded for OG from the Raptors and just like ran through the NBA schedule in January has really stuck with me. And they're taking that team and they're dropping McHale into the Dante DiVincenzo spot and moving DiVincenzo to the bench. And that's just another thing. This is just popping into my head from Boston is the value of size in the NBA. Having Mikal Bridges as your 2 guard, OG as your 3, Randall at 4, and then whoever their 5 is. And those guys are mobile enough that they can play those positions even at their size. So I think that's the closing lineup. But you also now have the flexibility where if Randall doesn't have it going or you need a more spacing lineup, you can do basically the Nova Knicks with OG in there for Hart or with Hart in there instead of DiVincenzo. We also should probably talk about the fact that it's crazy that the 4 of the starting 5 guys from an NCAA title team are now on the same team in the NBA.
Wisco beat them. Just remember that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, screw going big. Let's have some fun. Death lineup, closing lineup. We're going Brunson, we're going Dante, we're going Hart, we're going McHale, and we're going OG. Go small. Why are we matching size? Space everyone out. Switch everything. Yes, they're gonna hunt Brunson, but I'm sure Tibbs will just load up ball side. Let's go small. Let's have some fun. They don't need a center.
Yeah, OG can guard 48-year-old Al Horford. He'll figure it out. Porzingis might not be healthy in another playoffs. So we're just a Jalen Brunson trade away from switching 1 through 5, right? We can send Rick with him. I think, seriously, on the Knicks positivity side, one, if my first thought is I would love the trade for the Knicks if they did it for 3 first-rounders, then I can't really hate it for 5, especially because with Brunson as an established like top 12 guy, and a really strong system and a lot of good players around him that you have contract control over, you guys aren't going to have extremely valuable picks for a few years. So like I can't go from love to hate based on 2 middle of the first round picks at the very best. Also, I talked a lot during the playoffs about how devastating a playoff out this was for you guys, and not because it was in your control, like the injury bug got the best of you, but you're now compiling a roster where you could lose one of your best guys to injury and still make it to the conference finals, still be in the mix. Randall could get hurt. OG could get hurt, and you still have a lot of bodies to bang with some of the best in the East. So I understand that. I think a lot of teams around the league are seeing this period now as a window to steal a championship, steal a finals appearance. The Celtics were absolutely amazing, but I don't think anyone thinks they're a dynasty or a juggernaut moving forward. That's not to say they won't be right back in the mix, and they're still the favorite. I was saying to Max before we started recording, like, even if Bridges was Devin Booker right now for the same deal, like the Celtics are still the favorite in the East. You guys are going to have to prove that you mesh well with this new group, but the talent level and the depth has just hit a whole new tier, in my opinion, for the Knicks now. And you're going to have a little bit of buyer's remorse this summer, but you're going to get to watch an unbelievable team in the fall. This isn't a big Julius Randle panel. I'll speak for myself. Like I would have moved him a while ago. But also, he was a big piece of your regular season success, and I can't take that for granted. But I just think in terms of the playoffs, I like where Andy's going. Like now you have a lot of switchable players around Brunson, and God willing, your Hardenstein can stay. If not, you can find like another jack of all trades center on the free agent market. Hopefully, maybe something happens in the draft, whether it's a trade or you end up with a center that falls to the end of the first. I know you have a couple picks at the end of the first round right now.
Take two centers.
Yeah, exactly. If Hardenstein's on his way out because like that $3 million difference between Bogdanovich and Bridges,
Damn you, second apron.
there are a bunch of middle of the draft bigs that I think could stick as at least backups in the league.
For the Knicks too, like you were saying, they can lose guys, and like if they lose Brunson, he goes down for something. Who's the second most important guy that they couldn't lose? Is it Mikal now, and why is it definitely Dante still?
Well, it would have been before this trade OG, but now having Mikal, Iron Man Mikal, I will add, makes OG's loss more weatherable. So yeah, I don't know. It might still be OG, but I would be curious to hear from the Nets fans. Maybe Andy, you can go first, or yeah. What was the experience like rooting for Mikal the last 2 years? Because I know the first year was very different from the second year, I'm guessing, as the experience of rooting for him. And do you expect he'll be different in New York also?
I expect he'll be different in a great way. Like I love Mikal, and I know I've been very pro getting rid of Mikal, but that's only because, like I said before, he's not a number one, and Nets fans and the Nets media, I guess, were treating him as if, oh, they found their guy. We're gonna build around Mikal. That wasn't the answer. Mikal was the answer to getting the picks, getting everything back. I think he's going to be a really great fit in New York, playing off of Brunson, playing off of Hart, off of OG, like everyone around him. He was a great player to watch and a fun player to root for too, because he's playing on both ends of the floor. But in reality, he got frustrating because all you kept hearing was, "Oh, they have Mikal. He's great. He's the new savior for them." And he's not. He's not. He's not a number one. Maybe he's a number two. I don't even know if he is. He's a number two around the right guys. But I think you're gonna like rooting for him, especially playing for a defensive Knicks team.
Yeah.
Andy and I have always been opposites. You know, he's the more positive one, and maybe I'm a little bit rougher around the edges. I loved Mikal when he came over. You know, don't get me wrong. It was exciting to see him kind of lead the team against the Sixers in that playoff series. But ever since then, I know he gives off this like happy-go-lucky attitude, but the podcasting and the complaints about, you know, going over with his boys in New York, I just couldn't take it this year. And he started just, you know, dogging at the end of the year. And I honestly think he's soft. And I think that being on this Knicks team will be great for him because he doesn't want to be a star, apparently. And I think he'd rather be a third or fourth option, which is great for him. But for me, it's like, all right, now get out.
Yeah. Well, I think he'll be fourth on this Knicks team, like, because OG wants a bigger offensive role. So it seems like OG, Mikal, like kind of take your pick. Whoever's the defense is paying less attention to on a given night is going to be the third guy. Randall's still going to get a lot of offense rumbling down the lane and on putbacks and in transition and things like that. And I'm sure he's still going to want a couple elbow touches, although hopefully we'll limit it to a couple.
I hope you like the finger guns. You're going to see a lot of finger guns in the Garden this year.
These and a lot of these.
I don't believe that Bridges is a drastically different guy than the Phoenix iteration. He just had way more space on a bad team to take on a higher usage role on offense. And we saw the scoring blossom. Like, I think he's a way more versatile offensive player, more versatile scorer than OG Anunoby. And so I hope OG can like swallow his pride a little bit. Bridges just has like the deeper bag, better feel on offense. Like, I think he should be taking on more of that offensive burden. But at the same time, in the context of the draft, like we've talked a lot about how higher usage prospects think Dalton Connect at Tennessee has some really poor defensive tape, in part because there weren't many guys in college taking on more of an offensive load. And I think the Nets fans here will agree that Bridges' defense has not been what the Nets thought they signed up for, at least in year two. And that's partly because he had to do a lot on the offensive end. But I'm interested to see now if settling in will result in more of the elite Phoenix Bridges defense that we saw for the first few years of his career. On the pessimistic Knicks side, I'm just wondering, after Andy said, let's close with 4 Nova guys, and I really do mean this. You might laugh it off, but what's it like now to be a non-Villanova Knick? Like, does it kind of suck now to be OG Anunoby when the cameras are on these 4 guys and they're joking about the parties and you know, Jay Wright and the family, and I can't believe it all happened. Like, they're the Sports Illustrated cover picture. And I just wonder how you build a strong locker room around them. Because if I'm OG Anunoby now, or Hardenstein for that matter, and we're looking at this with our agent and our family, and we're saying, like, so we're gonna take a couple fewer millions to be kind of adjacent to the Villanova Knicks show. You know, it becomes a tougher sell.
You take a couple fewer millions if you think you can contend for a championship. That's what the decision is.
Let's get toxic.
Listen, we all have a large friend group chat, and then there's always the really small group chats too. And we know that's going to be there. And we know that's going to be the most populated chat too. And I'm ready for a little bit of behind the scenes tea on that end.
Yeah. But I also think like they've built a really strong foundation there. Tibbs isn't going to put up with the bullshit if it becomes like the Villanova clique and everyone else. Like, I don't expect it. Going from 3 to 4 now, like you said, it's just a crazy dynamic they have.
And I will say quickly, OG is going to be the highest paid player on this team for the next couple of years. So hopefully that will calm some of, if there's any like ego bruising or anything from like, yes, you wanted to leave Toronto to have a bigger offensive role and you're back to being a third or fourth option. He's going to be getting paid close to $40 million, and Brunson's in the 20s for the next couple of years. McHale's in the 20s. Randall's in the 20s. Josh Hart's not quite 20. DiVincenzo's in the low 10s to teens. Like, OG is going to be, by a significant margin, the highest paid player on this team for the next 2 years. So hopefully that can calm any possible like hurt feelings that might arise from this.
And it is an interesting like new model, and we'll see how it works for New York, having like a bunch of guys in the 30 and under range.
I think it's an interesting case study because, for the last, decade plus now, it's been, all right, can we get first, the big three? Now, can we get two, superstars? Are these high, like, what do you define these guys as? High-end role players? Because you can't call them stars. I mean, besides Brunson.
So Brunson's a star. No, like, cemented.
Yeah, set him aside. Number two.
I don't know. I mean, I think OG and McHale are top. McHale's probably a top 40 player, I'd say. And that might even be conservative. OG's a top 40 to 50 player. Randall in the regular season is probably like a top 40 player. In the playoffs, who knows? It's kind of the Boston model where like you don't have that tier 1A like Jokic type player. And it's what you have to do when you don't have that guy, which is make the rest of your team as good as possible. Like, I think in the right circumstances, Mikal Bridges came damn close to making an all-star team at points for the Brooklyn Nets. Like, he is close to an all-star caliber level of player as a top 40 guy. Like, that's kind of the range. OG is probably he's never going to come close to making an all-star team, but he's so good at what he does that he's almost like, yes, in a vacuum, he's closer to like probably a 40 to 50 type range, but he's just so elite at such a valued skill set that I think it almost counts for more. And then if you start expanding it to the greater rotation where you're adding in DiVincenzo and Hart, like that's probably 6 top 70, 80 players, which is a lot. Like most teams don't have that. Most teams have like 3 or 4.
Also, rewind a year, we had a much different opinion of Jaylen Brown. I know I did. Like, I really liked him as a player. I think he was a top 20 guy, but he's now a finals MVP and like really killed off all the demons from the Miami series last year. So things change. Like, Bridges could be galvanized by this new situation and take it up a notch and be a top 20 guy next year. Like, I don't expect it, but crazier things have happened. And what this also has me thinking too is like, all the fun tweets right now are like the Nets got Cam Johnson, 5 second-round picks, Jay Crowder, and 9 first-rounders for Kevin Durant. And it's just an interesting thing to think about that if you trade your superstar, which traditionally, if you trade a superstar, you lose the trade in the NBA, no matter how many picks you get. They didn't lose the Durant trade. I mean, they lost the whole saga of Kyrie and Harden and Durant and all the bullshit that Nets fans had to go through during that era, which shouldn't even be called an era because it was so brief, but they actually ended up winning the trade on some level because they took a guy like Mikal Bridges and gave him enough usage to put up the stats that command this many first round picks in a trade. And so, like, maybe the Bulls will end up winning the Caruso trade because Josh Giddey is going to average nearly a triple double. And whether you want him to be your longtime dude or not, you can offload him in a couple of years for a bunch of first round picks.
Yeah. I mean, here's my issue, and I think Andy maybe will have a take on this. I'm so excited to wave the flag. I'm waving the flag this year. You will see me watching Duke every week. I mean, I will be all over it. But this is now the fourth guy that's that's asked out of the Nets organization in the last 2 years. Andy, that makes me a little nervous.
Here's my take on that, Justin, because I do understand what you're saying, but I think all four individuals are very specific outlier situations. Like the whole Kyrie thing, he's Kyrie Irving. Everything happened. We know what happened there. He's not the typical one. Mikal has best friends on the Knicks.
Come on, but everyone in the NBA has best friends. It says more.
You are the problem. You are the problem.
At a certain point, I feel like it's on the Nets organization and their staff to to work with these guys and get them to buy in a little bit more. I mean, come on, everyone has best friends in the NBA.
It's a tough sell, and one of the reasons I'm so happy for you guys that you got off Mikal is that like I said, the emotional cheating has been real, and he always let the Knicks fans have the last laugh and let the Nets fan minority in this city feel like shit.
I'm just very anti-going as Sean Marks for being like, oh, he's ruined the Nets culture. They're losing all the other guys, because I think it all starts with Kyrie and what he did. I know that this can go on, and this can be like a full 2-hour pod about that. But I think what he did stems down to every single player that left, not Mikal, because he didn't get to play with Kyrie there. But Mikal's thing is different. Yes, everyone has friends, but when it's a roommate situation from college, it's a little different.
I mean, all right, I know this is not a Nets pod, and by no means do I think we need to go onto a tangent around the Brooklyn Nets right now. I will say I don't blame Marks for anything that he did regarding the first Harden trade or the Kyrie move or the Durant move. I kind of start blaming him with the Ben Simmons thing, because he should have just cut it at dead weight and let Harden sit on the bench and let him whine or whatever, not take on another bloated contract. And that's where I started getting a little bit uneasy with Marks at the helm.
You guys have been in a terrible spot now for a couple of years. Like, you got to hold your GM accountable for that. This is an incredible win for the organization, but it's also sometimes you got to roll your eyes at the same time that the incredible win for your organization is getting a shit ton of draft picks and not winning basketball games. If you asked me, would you rather bet on Bridges or one of these Knicks picks becoming the best player from this trade? Like, it's probably Bridges. That's just the reality of the draft.
In terms of like the number of picks, I wanted to go through like the recent history of these like kind of all-in draft asset type moves, and the ones that worked and the ones that didn't. So there's the Drew Holiday deal where you go 3 unprotected firsts and 2 swaps. That worked. You got Giannis to resign and you won a championship. There's the AD deal, which is probably the largest package that you'll ever see given up, because it's all the draft capital as well as Brandon Ingram, who was seen as probably a guy who was worth at least 2 firsts on his own as an asset. Lonzo Ball, who was a rising young asset. Josh Hart was in that deal, but that was still a win for the Lakers. They won the championship, and now they still haven't really like reaped the punishment of that. It's more just that they can't improve their roster, but it's not like, they're sending the Pelicans generational prospects as a result of it. There's the Rudy Gobert deal, which the jury's still out on. Like, it seems like that's working out pretty well for Minnesota for now. We'll check back in a couple of years. Then there's the host of the ones that involve the Nets. There's the Harden to the Nets one, which was bad, but at least the Nets were able to reverse that one today. There's KD going to the Suns, which has been a failure to this point. And then there was the original sin one, which maybe we don't have to talk about, of the KG and Paul Pierce one. I think the through line is if you can trade it without gutting the rest of your team, then you're in pretty good shape. Like, and Paul George, how could I forget, to the Clippers, where it was all the picks and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which might be the most disastrous of any of the recent ones. So I do have some hope for this, because although the Knicks gave up all their picks, they do still have extra draft assets from some moves they've made in the past. They've got protected picks from Detroit, Washington still coming down the line. They have 2 picks in this draft. I would not be surprised if they package one of those and a second to maybe pick up an extra pick next year instead of taking 2 picks this year. And they did all that without giving up any rotation players, basically. They gave up Boyan, and they still have their top 8 from last year. Which I think is still very good management, and they have a very savvy front office. I'm hopeful they'll be able to manage the cap in a way that allows them to bring back OG. It seems like the noise is right now they're going to lose Hartenstein, which would really suck because he's such a joy to watch, and he's a really unique presence at the center position. He brings something that most non-star centers can't bring. But at the same time, center's probably the most replaceable position in the NBA. Like, you can get another serviceable center.
I do think the Knicks on paper are my second favorite situation in the East. And I might be over punishing Milwaukee for like just the injury sadness in round 1 this year. That team just continues to get older and shallower in the depth chart, and the Knicks are young and strong and deeper than ever. So you're in the mix. I think the Knicks could push the Celtics in a series. I think the Celtics should still very clearly be the number 1 team in the East in everyone's eyes heading into 24-25.
Yeah.
I think it's sad that Kenny Atkinson just signed a new deal with the Cavs, because bring him back.
I see Andy wanting to talk, but I'm just going to make the executive decision of leaving Kenny Atkinson talk to 60 seconds or less.
I just want to say coaching matters. Done.
Final thoughts. I think the Subway Series next year is going to be a movie. I think the Nets are going to steal one of them, and Cam Thomas is going to drop 45 in the Garden. Justin's optimistic about Jody, the new coach. I don't know anything about him, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I'm excited to see both teams moving further in the direction that they should. I think this will end up looking like an overpay, but that's also an unfair thing to say at the same time, because, like, yeah, most likely the Knicks aren't going to get a title out of this team that they're building. If they're just like very firmly in the mix, making a playoff run year after year now, on some level, you can't complain.
And I will say, and this year I've finally arrived in the spot that I thought I would never arrive in, which is that I have full faith in the Knicks front office, which was such a foreign concept to me 10 years ago. But Leon Rose and the capologists with Brock Aller, all these other guys that he's hired into the front office, they've just done a really good job of winning stuff on the margins over the last few years. Like, our friend of the show, Chris Persianen, likes to say that, like, the first trade they ever made was like basically on draft night, they went from having picks 26 and 30 to like 24 and 29 or something like that. And that's kind of been the MO of their front office, is like the guy who trades the paperclip up to the house of just like winning each deal just a little bit at a time. And they by no means had like an OKC-ish or even a Pelicans or Jazz-ish trove of draft capital assets. But when you win these deals on the margins over and over again, and the OG trade, they probably gave up less than what a lot of people thought OG would have gone for, with just IQ and RJ being the outgoing assets there. IQ coming up for a big deal now as well. Like, when you do that over and over again, maybe you earn the right to overpay a little bit. And I do think it's an overpay. I mean, 5 first-round picks is crazy. Like, 4 first-round picks for Gobert was a lot. But at the same time, it's a young team. All these guys are just kind of entering their primes right now for the most part, or like are early into their primes. And I mean, if this team keeps OG and Hartenstein by some cap magic, I'm 10 toes, 20 toes down, all in, like, let's fucking go. If they keep OG and lose Hartenstein, I still like the deal. I think they're a top 2 team in the East, and they are, I think, uniquely well suited to match up against Boston, even if their on paper talent isn't quite as good. So I think that's kind of where I've arrived with it. I still have a pit in my stomach when I think about, like, just the uncertainty of free agency coming up. And if things go wrong, man, that is a lot of draft capital out the door. But we still have a lot of assets. We have stuff that, in like the doomsday scenario where things go wrong, we have stuff that we can trade for draft picks, like the Nets just did. When things go wrong, you can spin assets into more assets. And I think this was the summer they had to go for it. Mikhail might not be the best player on the market, but he fits their team better than just about anyone out there. I think that's the place I've arrived at.
Drew, I don't want the last word on this pod, so let me just get this in. There is nothing worse in the NBA than being average and being in the middle. So I'm thrilled that the Nets pick a direction, and that will be on the bottom, but at least it's not floating around the 10 or 11 seed. So I'm thrilled.
Just to end positive as well, Drew, you said the Nets need to bring back culture, maybe go get their own Euro. He's back, man. Bojan's back.
Bojan's going to Spain. Okay. Actually, no, he's collecting that paycheck. It's a fat one. You can't make that money for Barcelona. I'm old enough to remember Bridges as the third best guy in Phoenix getting stifled by a cocktail of Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, and Spencer Dinwiddie. And I think he's grown. I think I probably didn't give him enough grace earlier in the pod. I think he's grown a lot from that guy. But it's still crazy that guy tonight commanded 5 first-round picks and a swap. Fellas, it's been a pleasure chopping this up with you. The New York rivalry might actually be a real thing moving forward. And we'll be back soon. Actually, we'll be back tomorrow night. We are going live on X for the draft. We're going to have some people coming in and out. Justin's going to be over in my place. You might get another cameo. Peace.
Boris Dirk.